Hi y'all, I'm Tanya.
And I'm Lee.
We are co-hosts of the I Want to Believe podcast.
Join us for new episodes every Sunday night where we discuss all things paranormal and unsolved.
If you love all things spooky or just want to listen to two geeks talk about ghosts, this is the podcast for you.
You can find us on Audioboom,
iTunes,
Google Play,
Stitcher, and more.
Stay spooky!
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Southern Fried Geekery podcast. If I'm not mistaken, this is episode 44 for us, isn't it, guys?
Seems like it.
Sure. Yeah, I think we're just rolling into this thing. So, first off, I guess we should introduce ourselves as always. I'm Caleb.
I'm Craig.
I'm Sean.
And I'm Jerry.
And we are recording this live really fucking early on Sunday morning at Conway Comic-Con.
ComiConway.
ComiConway.
It might also be known as ComiConway.
It might actually be that. So, did I mention we're tired?
Have you read Hillbillies?
I have read Hillbillies. Who's that guy that also wrote Hillbillies? Eric Bell?
Yes.
Somebody give Caleb espresso stat.
No, I snuck in booze, so we're all good.
We don't know if it'll work, but it's probably worth a shot.
This is actually going to be a little bit of a short and stunted episode for us because we've got some extra stuff we want to throw on the end, and also we are hiding in a broom closet in the back before people get here. So I guess we're going to kind of roll right into things. How's the con been for you guys?
Absolute blast. I've been selling my work.
That's called prostitution,
Sean's
Sean.
been running tricks.
Hey, gotta buy my comics.
You are dressed as a sexy lumberjack. Like, I've got several friends who would toss you a 20. I'm just saying.
I'm going to find you a roll of paper towels today, sir.
Thank you. No, I've been selling my work, my artwork, and some comics, and meeting a lot of cool people. So yeah, it's been a blast.
I've had a lot of fun. Yeah, we set up a booth. This is our first time tabling a con as SFG. We've given away a lot of business cards, a lot of buttons. We've had several of you walk up and show us that you have indeed subscribed to our podcast on whatever your podcast aggregate is, or even our YouTube channel. It's been a lot of fun. Today at 2:00, we're raffling off a double-page spread of Javier Salteras art that Craig has so beautifully and amazingly donated to the cause. And we're selling, what, $2 a ticket? That's
$2 a raffle ticket.
That's insane for a double-page spread at a Predator #2.
Yeah, I would say come get it, but by the time you guys hear this, it'll be raffled
That's true.
off.
It's going to be gone. So we're just talking past tense at this time. So I did some dollar bin diving yesterday, and I'm probably going to do some more
I've
today.
also been having a great convention.
We're going to fucking get to you, needy. Jesus.
Well, not now.
Pipe down, you. Look, just because you cosplayed as a lesbian doesn't mean you get to push me around.
I thought you were moving on.
No, I was just going to say that I did some dollar bin diving.
Well, that's our episode for today. We appreciate all you tuning in.
Can we go back to the previous comment?
No, let's just move on.
Keep it rolling.
I did some dollar bin diving. I picked up some old Action Comics stuff. I grabbed some old Conan stuff. Got some old Incredible Hulk stuff. And probably going to do some more dollar bin diving here in a little bit. I commissioned a piece of original art that I'm pretty stoked about that I'm going to throw up on the Instagram later. It'll be a surprise. Because honestly, it's too early and I can't think about who I did or what I did. Did I mention I'm tired?
Not the first time you said
I was good till we started recording. You guys were all grumbly assholes. And now that we're recording, I'm just like, I don't have words and no things.
Now he's the asshole and we're not.
So,
Craig,
Jerry, would you like to tell us about how your con experience
I
has
don't even
been?
want to know.
You better
No,
say
All right,
fucking
come on,
word.
let's go on.
Yeah, no, it's been great. This is actually the first time I've had a booth as well. I'm set up with my model building group, Gunpla and Chill, and we had a contest Friday night, which was a pretty good turnout. We had double the entries.
So who won all of the contests, Jerry?
Who won 3 specifically?
Here we go.
Who won 3 times? Jerry, did you win 3 awards in the contest you put together?
I'm
and
just
hosted?
following in the footsteps of every great politician this country has ever seen.
You're not wrong. I've been having a blast at the con.
Yeah.
I bought one thing yesterday at the con, and it was a late birthday present for Caleb because I never got him one.
You are a beautiful man, and I really do appreciate it.
But today, motherfuckers, is all about me. I'm going to find me something nice and shiny that I don't need and don't have shelf space for.
Yes.
I picked up a couple of pieces of original art. One was inked by Andrew Pepoy, and it was Afterlife with Archie. And luckily enough, Norm Brayfogle did the art on it.
Wait, it was Afterlife with Archie?
Or Life with Archie.
Life with
I'm sorry.
Archie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
And-
showed me that yesterday. That was
Yeah,
amazing.
Norm Brayfogle did the art on it, and to be able to find a piece of his original art at this point is
Right.
just luck.
Very cool.
And then I got a Looney Tunes Fast and the Speediest, which was done by Robert Pope, and it has Roadrunner in a wheelchair being pushed by Speedy Gonzalez, so I had to buy that.
You have to at that point.
Yeah, and then Robert Pope is doing Peanuts books for the Schultz family. He mimics the 60s style Peanuts.
Right.
And he's been doing a bunch of books, but he's not allowed to sell any of the art from it. So I actually commissioned a Red Baron Snoopy from him.
I can't wait to see that. And because my brain started working again, the piece I commissioned was Scarlet Witch by Peoples, which is actually his name.
Brent
Peoples.
By people.
Yeah. So I got Peoples to do me art, and I can't wait to pick that up this afternoon. Words, guys.
We're going to cut that out and just say I got peoples to do me.
I got Peoples to do me, which is actually going to be the title of the show. But hey, speaking of Robert Pope and Andrew Pepoy, I was lucky enough to get asked to moderate a panel with those guys yesterday, and I'm going to throw that in on the end of this episode. So stick around when we finish up talking about comics, and you get to hear me talk to two amazing cartoonists. I'm also doing one today with a couple of guys that we know from the show. Some of our really, really good friends, Brian Stewart, who does Phantasm Media, but also somebody that I've never got to meet, somebody this is going to be a lot of fun for me, but it's Mr. John Russo, the guy who wrote Night of the Living Dead. I'm moderating a panel with those guys this afternoon.
Very awesome.
So if you came up to ComiConway and you spoke to us, we really, really thank you. We really appreciate it. We're going to be doing more of these local cons. We're going to try to branch out and do some bigger cons. But we had a blast. It was we'd like to thank all of the crew at ComiConway. It's been a great time.
Yeah, it's always the show in Central Arkansas that I probably look forward to the most. It's gone really from nothing to like this really great thing. Really,
it's
like
almost
where
the
it's
perfect
been,
size for a con at this point. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So moving on for that, before we talk about comics, just last little thing. We are recording this on November the 4th. Voting takes place on November the 6th. So get your asses to a polling place and vote.
We're talking to you, Tyler.
specifically.
Yeah, we're looking at you, kid. But no, look, on this show, I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. If you have questions about local voting in Arkansas, reach out to me on my personal pages. I'll be glad to give you my opinions, but go vote. It matters. People die because you don't vote. It's a thing.
Santa Claus kills elves when you don't vote.
And also when you talk about Christmas before fucking November.
I actually voted for the first time this year.
I'm proud of you, buddy. I'm super excited about it. It's important, so go out there and vote. All right. Well, let's dig into some comics before we run out of time.
Yeah, we are on an abbreviated schedule today, guys. We got about 45 minutes before the show opens. We got to get this done, and we're gonna blow through this pretty quick. But we have the interview also for you guys to listen to. So
that's why we're I'm good at like fast blowings. It's a thing.
God damn it!
I wasn't gonna let him
out
go.
of here.
All right, so
people's doing them.
Why doesn't somebody who is not me tell us what book we're going to roundtable this week?
Today we're actually going to talk about Hex Wives.
Oh.
A new book from DC Vertigo. I'm really digging it. I'll tell you right off the bat because it kind of starts off with the Salem witch trial era, which is a very interesting point in history that I'm really digging. Just a quick overview of it. It seems a group of witches that keep reoccurring through generations. Looks like they're finally going to try to stop this Puritan-led organization is going to try to stop them in the modern time.
Oh, nice. Yeah, so they, as I was reading, it seems like this little coven, essentially
they keep reincarnating.
Yeah, throughout time and history. And as long as one of them exists, they can bring the other ones back, it seems like.
So it seems like a really interesting story. I mean, like when we all brought it up and I looked into it, I saw that the art is done by Mirka Andolfo of the book Unnatural you guys have heard me talk about. So I was already hooked.
Oh, and who's the writer of this book?
Writer
Ben Blacker.
is Ben Blacker.
Yeah, Ben Blacker. It's interesting seeing him write a book without Ben Acker, who they're a team who've done some Deadpool stuff. They work a lot together. I know they're a TV writing team. Right. It's interesting to see him kind of branch out on his own.
Yeah. Well, I'm digging it. The writing right off the bat, like I think the characters were really likable and like I don't know, seeing even in Puritan times, and I don't know the history of cuss words, but be calling people assholes and fuckers and stuff. Like, I know they've been around a long time, but it still feels like kind of a modern touch.
I think that's a modern take on it.
Yeah.
But I know some cuss words have been around since that era.
So fun fact, if you're watching old shows and you hear the old hillbilly go, "What in tarnation?" Tarnation used to be the legitimate, like, old school word fuck. Like, that was that bad. Like, if you said tarnation, a grandma would slap you. Right. Like, it was that bad a word. So I think it's interesting, yeah.
But yeah,
So it was slap your grandma good?
Slap your mama.
My grandfather almost like turned around and like took me back home for saying sucks one time. Yeah. Like he slammed on his brakes and
Nice.
Like,
yeah. Congrats.
I got whipped for saying darn one time by my fundamentalist dad.
Oh man.
but Hex Wives, I recommend it. I'm if you interested in any kind of like stories involving witches, witchcraft, and like I said, history going back into the Salem witch trials, I'd recommend it.
Nice.
It was a lot of fun. I didn't understand I understood the last page, but I didn't understand that last segment because it was in modern times, but they were acting like they were living in 60s America or 50s America.
I was going to put that when I said modern time, I was like, but I also think it feels old. Modern by how it started.
Yeah.
You know
So
what I mean?
let's address that for a minute, just for the people who are living. So as Sean said,
Living.
well, people who are listening.
Hey, our dead fans matter too, okay?
Look, I'm not alive yet. So, as Sean said, there is this puritanical organization of men, or at least townsfolk, pitchfork wielding people who their lineage, like their family history, is trying to eradicate this coven of reincarnating like lesbian witches, which is awesome. Not if you're the lesbian witches, but it makes for a good story. As they finally figure out a way to fight back against this thing, and it turns out that way is the patriarchy. Somebody say boo.
Boo.
Yeah, boo the patriarchy. That's their thing. So it kind of sets them up for this 1950s era, like Stepford Wives, have dinner ready for your man when he gets home.
That was the way I read it too, but it was just kind of confusing.
Like I said, we're all trying to wake up. You're absolutely right, because it was very much that whole like, I wanted to discuss something with my husband, but he's like, well, you need to read half the books I have before you can talk. Just go make my turkey. It's very much that 50s, 60s.
Yeah. And
so I said modern.
Well, no, but see, here's the thing: is I do think that it's going to unroll into like modern times. I think that they've kind of created this very. What was the movie where the kid, like, he lived his entire life in a studio, like a film studio, and everything was filmed?
Oh,
Truman.
The Truman Show. Yeah. It's kind of like, I think it's going to be like
Jim Carrey, right?
that thing. Yeah, they've got them trapped in this little ecological bubble where they aren't going to be able to understand what's outside, but it's going to finally break through.
And they were like talking about like forest fires and stuff like that.
Right.
So
I'm not wrong. It's in 2008.
Yeah.
Because it's 2005 and then it said 3 years later.
But like I said, the dialogue, even the cars and everything, I think you're right though.
Yeah.
I think that's what it's going to be.
They've got them in some kind of limbo.
Well, because they're trying to leave, but the world's on fire around the city, so they can't get out type thing. So
there's a lot going on in just the first issue without addressing it, so I think it's building.
And it almost seems like their powers are trying to reawaken them and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Some of them have some visions and stuff like that.
So I'm kind of with Sean on this one. I really like Mirka Andolfo's art. The only thing, if I have to say, is she draws horses in an odd way. Like it almost, like the way she draws horses in this book, it kind of reminds me of an animated Disney style horse, and juxtaposed with her kind of semi-modernist, almost European style art, it stands out for me, and for me it's not in a good way, and that's the only kind of complaint I have to an otherwise really solid book.
Personally didn't catch that, but bringing it up, my best guess, and I only really know her art from Unnatural, which just instantly made me a fan, and that one is definitely done in a more cartoony, detailed style.
Yeah.
So maybe she's just kind of used to drawing animals that way from her previous work.
Have they shown any horses in Unnatural yet, Sean?
Horse, man,
yeah, they have.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, she's dreaming about having sex with a horseman through the whole thing.
It's a wolf.
Wolf. That's right.
I didn't want to make horseman joke. No, I don't think we've seen a horse.
No, that's right. It's a wolf. Yeah.
I'm personally ready
All I
to
can
get
think of is BoJack.
that series in trade because I want to binge it at once.
It's really good.
Yeah, that's the only complaint I have, if it's even a complaint at all, is it seems like it's a little bit of a different stylistic take. But you ask any artist, and horses are some of the hardest things to draw.
Jerry, what was your thoughts on the
Long-faced
book?
Weirdos.
Huh? I really enjoyed it. I don't know if I'm going to completely stick with it. but I'm interested in picking up the trade and everything with it.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting. I just have so much on my pull list already.
Yeah, for sure.
But
You got to make decisions.
yeah.
Well, Jerry, while you've got the floor, why don't you tell us a book that you read this week?
Okay, so I'm probably starting to sound like a broken record here talking about Spider-Geddon.
No.
They're just releasing like so many good titles from it, and they released two really good little spin-offs from it. One of them was Vault of Spiders. I recommend it for anybody that's interested in just little one-off stories. They have 4 of like alternate universe Spider-Man, and they're all done by different artists, writers. I'll just kind of tell you like the little synopsis of each one, and then I'll tell you like the creative team on my favorite one in this book. They have the Cowboy Spider-Man, which was pretty fantastic. Somebody mentions at one point, like, is your horse wearing a mask? And it was pretty great. He has like web pistols.
It's my favorite country song.
Yeah.
Is your horse wearing a mask?
Then they had
So instead of web shooters, web pistols.
and then they had a
Does it shoot web fluid?
Yeah, probably. No, he fills it with web fluid and it
Yes.
turns into web.
And then you get to pop with a discount.
Then another one in here, which would honestly be a reason enough to pick it up, in my opinion, is we have a first appearance of a new Spider Woman, and she's the first ever African American Spider Woman. I wasn't super crazy about the story and
That
the
book's
premise
getting
of it,
stabbed somewhere by somebody.
but because it's one of those things where they have cyberspace and she's the hero of cyberspace, and I don't know, I've never really like fallen in love with those stories.
Unless it's Digimon.
And then one of the last stories in it was a Savage Lands Peter Parker.
Oh, nice.
Wilson Fisk essentially sabotaged the Parker's plane while they're flying over the Savage Land. Peter lands in it and basically has trial by fire and comes out on top, and he's just this badass, basically Khazar figure. And it's kind of funny because I think they have Khazar in it, but he's Khazar the Hunter, so he's like Kraven.
Oh,
the
that's
Khazar
awesome.
version.
Nice.
So that was pretty cool.
Is it Khazar or Khazar?
I always say Kazar. I wasn't going to
I always say Khazar. So we're 50-50.
Now, my favorite one, and the one that I was most excited about, was they had a story of Spider-Man, the Japanese Spider-Man, in it. And I haven't looked it up yet, but it's the story that they have in it is titled Chapter 78, The Final Galaxy Battle. And in a lot of tokusatsu stuff, they usually run about like, anywhere from 60 to 70 so episodes. So I kind of want to look it up to see if this was actually based off the last episode they had of this series. Now
Terry, if I can interject, who did the art on that particular?
Yeah, no, I was about to go over it. Yeah. So it was Jed McKay that wrote that one. And it was Sheldon Vella that did all the art. And
It is amazing art.
it is, and it's all black and white. So you get that feel of how old it was whenever it originally came out and everything. And he absolutely killed it in this. Like, you get the big space battle with the final boss, and he turns like into a giant monster. So he has to summon the giant robot Leopardon and fight him. And it's just,
We're going to let that go?
Nope. Leah Hardon?
Leopardon. I said pardon.
Pardon?
Yeah.
Well, pardon me, motherfucker.
But it was just amazing. I really enjoyed it. I was super excited about that. They also had the Spider Force that came out that was really great. They had a first appearance of it, but they haven't said who he is yet, so I will wait until the next issue of that to get into him. But a fantastic issue. I recommend picking it up.
Yeah,
I think it's only going to be 2 issues of Vault of Spiders.
Yeah.
So.
The Pardon's art reminds me a lot of Daniel Warren Johnson, and y'all know how much I have just a huge hard-on for him, and an actual hard-on.
That's like our 8th sexual reference in this episode.
Oh,
That's
and
what you get when we're tired.
I honestly didn't even realize it when I was reading it, but Cullen Bunn did the Western Spider-Man.
Oh, very
Nice.
cool. That makes a lot of
Very cool.
sense.
Very cool.
Yeah.
He does Western and horror
Yeah.
pretty well.
So it was like 6-gun Spider-Man.
All right, Sean, what'd you read, brother?
I read Heroes in Crisis #2.
I'm so sad.
If you've read the first one, you know this is a book series so far that's definitely going into the psychological aspect of being a hero. I'm not going to get into too much plot details. I will say this: if you're a Harley Quinn fan, this is the fucking book for you. And I might be biased. This is why I love the books. I love Harley when she's written well, and this is really well done, Harley. It's just, I don't want to talk too much about it, but Tom King, we definitely have a hard on for. did the writing duties.
Trademarked.
They mixed up the art through there, which I think they're kind of doing to keep on schedule by having multiple artists kind of join a book. And it works, honestly, because it always feels like a shift in tone of the stories when they change the art. So I don't mind that. But Clay Mann handled the pages 1 through 15 and 19 through 22, and he put out this, oh my God, there is a page of where he draws Harley in the classic costume, which is my jam. And
also trademarked.
Awesome. I loved it.
We are taking that word back.
Travis Moore did the art duty for pages 16 through 18. I'm going to brutalize his name, and I apologize. You can come find us on the show. If Tomio Mori and Arif Peranto, y'all did the colors. You did beautiful colors in this book. If I brutalize your name, come find us. And lettering done by Clayton Cowles. An awesome book. I can, to be fair with it, the story, I'm following it fine, which I've mentioned before. There are some stories I think work better in trade. Mm-hmm. This is a deep story. I think it's going to definitely need a reread to kind of catch everything. Definitely a trade paperback pickup, but I'm enjoying the singles issues of this, and I'm hooked in.
Oh, it's wonderful.
And I think this is one of the other ones that all of us read this
and we could have roundtabled this
right.
one too.
Yeah, there's so much that happens in that book. Again, the Harley Quinn in this book is, we're getting back to pre-New 52 Harley, I believe, without giving away too much. It's beautiful. It's there's some badass fight scenes in it, and there is Flash going fucking unhinged.
Yeah, so they did this thing where they finally get the some of the questions that we've had in the larger DC universe, because this is this event is a line-wide event, like it's happening in continuity, and everyone should know about it. We finally got an answer to some of the questions.
Right.
I think the editorial teams finally jumped on the same page, and that's nice.
Yep.
I never knew how much I wanted Clay Mann to just draw me little baby penguins.
Oh my God!
They actual like the animals, not the weird crooked nose.
I want
headshot guy.
The poker dogs.
Right.
Painting. I want that done by Clay Mann with penguins in it.
That would be awesome.
Instead of dogs.
It's so good. Absolutely.
It's a fantastic issue. If you're not on the series, get on it. If not, worse else comes, buy it and trade. You're going to like the story.
Absolutely. What'd you read this week, Craig?
I read West Coast Avengers, which was a really fun book. And before I get too far into it, it's of course Marvel. It's written by Kelly Thompson and the art by Stefano Caselli. So the thing about this book is it's just, I think either Caleb or I talked about issue number 1. I don't remember which one of us did, but we did review issue number 1, and we both loved it. And I've had nothing but positive responses from people about that book when they listened to it, and then went and bought the book, and they told us we were right. Well, there's a group of people, of course, that are bitching because Tigress's boobs aren't too big and she's no longer in heat and doesn't want to fuck every straight white male in the world.
Is it the usual band of Mary Bigots?
It's the same usual band.
Oh, good. Those guys.
Yeah.
Fuck them.
Yeah, pretty much. So the thing is, you just read this book and it's just fun. It's a good book. And I brought up those issues to somebody else and they told me, well, he barely mentioned those. And his real complaint was that it's a reality show and reality shows are dead. Well, I don't watch regular TV anymore. So I Googled that shit this morning. You know how many reality shows are starting this fall?
I have a wife. There's plenty of reality shows out there.
58 reality shows on TV.
Well, to be fair with this guy, he's really busy trying to freak out because he filed a lawsuit against Mark Waid, and he's probably going to get a countersuit that's going to eat his ass.
Yeah.
So
not in that good way.
Oh no.
So of this book, without too much involvement, they're still fighting Tigress, who's being controlled, which is probably why she's not in heat wanting to fuck every man. But let's ignore the actual story plot to support our own, agenda. But she's being controlled by MODOK, who is now BRODOK.
It's the best.
And along with some other monsters. Jerry, you would have liked this issue. It was Monsters Tearing Up San Francisco. I don't know if you read it or not, but
I didn't get the drop on West Coast Avengers.
Oh.
Yeah, they never got reprints of the first issue. So
that sucks. But you can read mine if you want to, because
I'm totally down.
It's basically been Monsters Tearing Up San Francisco that BRODOK's creating and unleashing
for it.
And Quentin falls asleep. He's supposed to be watching Tigress and falls asleep, and of course she or not Tigress, but Brodok, and Brodok escapes and goes and unleashes the other monsters. So they wake up to San Francisco just being torn apart, or maybe it's not San Francisco.
It's either L.A. or San Francisco. It's definitely
L.A. It's
Definitely the
L.A.
West Coast.
Yeah.
No, it's L.A. because of the whole reality
Hollywood
show
thing.
stuff.
It
Yeah.
is because that's where Superior Rock was, and
Yeah.
he had referenced them.
Yeah. So, it ends with a very good page of Hawkeye, Katie Bishop, has now been turned into a monster by Brodok, and she is a giant hawk.
surprisingly.
Surprisingly enough. But I'm sure her boobs won't be big enough as a hawk either.
Yeah.
Even though they're 50 foot tall and giant, it's not big enough.
Guys, you just have to understand. If you're worried about boobs, just remember, big or small, we love them all.
I mean, I love titties as much as the next straight male or lesbian
I'm not
woman.
that crazy about them.
Well, as much as the next straight male or lesbian woman loves them, but I'm not buying comic books for spank material.
Well, and I mean,
And you
we
can
have
if you
anime
want.
for.
Boundless is out there. Go buy all the porn
right.
mags you
But
want.
here's the thing: that guy's not talking about West Coast Avengers because he's upset about the content of the book. He's talking about West Coast Avengers because he does not like the woman who is writing it.
Yes.
that's the full stop.
Yeah.
He's upset that there are women with viable careers and extremely capable levels of talent that have succeeded where he has objectively failed. And that's the only thing. And he's just a waste of oxygen at this point.
So the book is fantastic, though. You got Quentin Quire is in love with
I was going to say,
with Gwenpool, but he didn't even realize it until he realized she's actually in danger because she no longer has powers. Somewhere through this book, she realizes that she's been retconned. She's like, I never hit the ground when I fall unless I've been retconned recently.
yeah, I love that. I love the
She's
fourth
like,
wall
that would
breaking.
suck, but only for a second. And so, he realizes she no longer has powers because he has to save her, and it's pretty badass. So.
It's such a good book.
I can't think of his name, but the new boyfriend that's any material he's touching, he can turn
changes
into
into that material?
Well, he's pierced his body with vibranium, so he can actually turn into vibranium now.
Jesus.
And yeah, so that's pretty badass.
He's
And
a fun new character. I
Yeah.
like him. I like what they're doing with him.
so yeah, good story. It's so much fun. This book has been so much fun. It's only issue 3, but the first 3 issues, I'm on board until it's done.
I mean, if you want dumb, fun comics that are just really, really good, go read West Coast Avengers and Domino. They both have similar tones. They're both just killing it.
And they're both team books, even though Domino is about Domino. It's a team book. They're both team books and what good superhero team books could be.
Indeed. Caleb, what did you read?
All right, so I'm gonna, Sean, you're a lone man on a lonely island this week with your DC book because I think the rest of us
wow.
are camping in Marvel World.
I like the Lonely Island. They're
It's all the coconuts are yours. So the book I want to talk about this week is Old Man Logan. No, I didn't. Yeah, I'm sorry.
We're on a boat.
Oh, yeah.
with my dick in a box.
Light bulb. Old Man Logan number 50. For a couple reasons. Number one, this series has been amazing. It's been very, very good. I've thoroughly enjoyed the entire thing. It's coming to an end. This is the wrap up of the Old Man Logan series. And starting next month, they're going into a new book called Dead Man Logan, which, you can see by the end of this issue, there are some things happening that would lead to that. I thoroughly enjoyed this. Ed Brisson is a fantastic writer. He just continually he's consistent. He's solid. He's creative. It's a lot of fun. Across the board for this entire book, for all 50 issues, the art team has done a phenomenal job to both capture the spirit and the tone of the artists that came before, that did the original Old Man Logan book, which off the top of my head, I'm not being able to think of because it's early.
Talking about the very first.
Yeah.
That was Mark Millar, wasn't it?
It's Mark Millar, but I can't think of who did the art.
Yeah, I can't
Is it
either.
Sorrentino?
No, it wasn't Sorrentino.
Sorrentino started off this arc.
Yeah.
They've done a wonderful job about capturing the style, but with also allowing themselves the room to breathe as their own identity, to give themselves their own artistic embellishments. And it's been wonderful. So with this book, when you think about Old Man Logan, who is automatically the person you think of as the large foil for that character, the major antagonist? It's the Maestro. The old man Hulk.
For sure.
Millar played with him. Well, they've brought him back. He started off this series as the major antagonist, and they're going to wrap up with him. He comes back. He's taken over a small Canadian town. He's known as the king in the town. He's killing indiscriminately. He's vicious and heartless. And Logan's having this problem. If you've been reading the book, you know that his regeneration factor, his healing factor, is not working the way he wants it to. He's got a chemical, it's an analog for drugs called Regenex that he has to inject himself with to survive, to be able to use his healing factor. And to combat the Maestro, he's going to have to kind of overdose on this drug. It's extremely sad. There's a character named Caleb who gets hung, which is a little, it makes me a little uncomfortable. Actually,
it's okay because your name is Cable now. So.
It's true. I changed, but also the other one's name is Aaron. So I think Aaron and Cooter and I have somehow offended Ed Breeson and he's coming for us. But so, there's a resistance movement that kind of starts up to counterback, to fight against the townspeople who have given up and who are siding with the Maestro for survival. And that kind of comes to a head in this book. There's not a lot of depth to the story in this book. It's just an amazing series of fight scenes between Old Man Logan and Maestro. You get some great character development for some of these side characters, and you get a really good culmination to the 50-issue arc. And with Marvel especially, we don't get 50 straight issues of the same title anymore. That's rare. Right. And so that speaks to me, that speaks to the testament. That is a testimony to how good this series has been.
It's been really good.
Under Ed Breeson's tutelage and guidance. It's just wonderful.
Yeah,
it's been fantastic.
And that's great because, when I was working at Kapow, whenever Jeff Lemire and Sorrento were getting off of it, and there were a lot of people that were, worried about it or considering getting off of it. And I mean, from what I've seen from your posts and everything, it's just been amazing.
Yeah,
the whole thing's been good.
They had no problem picking up from one creative team to another. It's been so solid. If they come out with an omnibus, so normally I like to buy omnibuses for like an entire series. If they come out with an omnibus that is just these 50 issues, my money's gone. Like, it's sold. Like, I would love this sitting on my shelf. So I'm really excited about it. Well, those are good books kind of all around, guys. Do we have any other things we want to throw in here?
Extermination was really fantastic. I don't know if anybody read it, but you get the reasons for young Cable being who he is, and there is a potential major death in it.
Wow.
Yeah.
You don't know that it's a death yet because it's a comic book, and next month or 2 weeks from now can be anything. But
it sure seems
like it was a major death.
Spiders, like I said, Spider Force was my other pick. It had Kane in it with a kind of a new team, and I just really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed the art in it. Like, it really kind of blew me away.
Yeah.
For me, the other book that came out for me that was really interesting is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, as adapted by Junji Ito.
Yes, God, yes.
I would say the one person that makes Caleb read manga is Junji Ito, because he writes horror like nobody's business. I haven't started the book, but I can't fucking wait to.
Yeah, I bought it as well, and I'm going to get it read here pretty quickly.
I realize the weight of what I'm about to say, but he is absolutely the Bernie Wrightson of East Asian publishing.
Wow,
hands
definitely.
down. His art style is that good. His writing is that good. I realize there's different styles, but there's a connection there
for sure.
And as someone credited him one time when I was talking about his career, he is the master of the page turner.
Absolutely,
yeah, for sure.
Every page is a fucking cliffhanger.
For sure.
Story.
So there was another book that came out it was a DC book that I think people would do well to go read. It was the Huckleberry Hound Green Lantern.
Oh, it was so good.
It was fantastic
and relevant.
Yeah, it was timely. It was wonderful. So let's talk about some books that are going to come out next week for New Comic Book Day. They always hit the shelves on Wednesday. It's at least my favorite day of the week. So we get to toss out some of those. So we'll start with you, Craig. What are you going to tell people they should pick up?
Outer Darkness. It's an Image book, and it's John Layman and Afu Chan. A lot of you know, maybe Afu Chan, I'm not sure. John Layman from Chew.
Yeah.
He was the writer on Chew. This is a book that takes place in a colonized galaxy of humans, but during our interstellar travels, we've discovered a terrifying secret. You just kind of jump on board as this crew starts to investigate what's going on at the outer rims of space. And John Layman, I'm in. Anything that he does, I'll probably be involved in reading. It's just he's that good to me.
Awesome. To the surprise of no one who's listened to the show before, I'm looking forward to Batman number 58, written by Tom King, and the art is done by Mikel Janin. Mm-hmm. This one is actually going to be brought to bring in the Penguin. And the Penguin, I think, is a character that, when written well, is one of Batman's better villains.
Oh, yeah.
And I think there's depth to his, like, the deformity about him, plus how he is, like, this arms dealer and this.
Well, he's bound to be in a bad mood right now.
Well, I was going to say, we're going to see how well their editorial's doing.
Right, because I know it's something about him. But I'm just looking forward to Tom King writing the Penguin. He did write the Penguin in Heroes in Crisis, of course. But I'm looking forward to, like, a story surrounding
I'm interested in, them doing the continuity and seeing if they mention anything from that.
Well, he's currently should be in a coma because Red Hood shot him in the head.
Yeah. So not continuity based.
Yeah. No, it may be. He may have woken up.
So it'll be interesting to see how they handle all of that because it's a continuation of the KG Beast story.
Right.
And he's going after whoever hired KG Beast.
Yeah.
So if he finds out that Penguin hired KG Beast because Jason shot Penguin.
Mm-hmm. But there's also, like, the big plot of it, too, is that Penguin's in the middle of a turf war.
Yeah.
And Batman's getting dragged into it on the Penguin's side. So I think it's going to be a really good dynamic written by Tom King.
Yeah, absolutely.
My book is actually going to be Green Lantern by Grant Morrison and Liam Sharp. I read the early preview that they had in DC. It didn't blow me away.
It was only 2 pages.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So I'm looking forward to it. I really want to see what Grant Morrison's going to do with Green Lantern.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. So the book I think you guys are going to do well to go pick up this next week is a book that I haven't spoken about before, but it's something I've been quietly reading, like digitally, trying to catch up, and I'm finally almost caught up to the point that I'm going to start buying single issues. It's Giant Days number 44 from Boom Studios. It's written by John Allison and Max Sarin, art done by Max Sarin and Liz Fleming. This is a story of kind of younger aged college girls, 3 friends who are going on their own adventures. One of them is really nerdy. The other one's kind of a goth chick. The other one's just kind of like trying to fit in where she can get in. And it's a fun series. It's got a lot of heart. I don't think it's an all ages series, but you can definitely let your teenagers read it, maybe even your preteens. It's a lot of fun. And yeah, I've fallen in love with these characters.
I've bought the entire series and haven't read one issue.
It's phenomenal.
So I plan to once it's done.
Yeah.
So
I've been reading it on Comixology, just trying to catch up because I was late to the show.
Yeah.
So that's all I've got, guys. So we want to wrap this up and go sit at a con table?
Well, I want to tell everybody my spotlight that Caleb skimped me out on last episode.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry.
Just make it quick, brother.
It is the first of the month.
No, I just, with everything going on with the Gunpla and giant robots, I want to know your favorite giant robot.
All right, so next episode, Spotlight. What is your giant robot?
Okay.
We're late on this because of weddings and cons and life and in general.
I'm back, guys.
We are. We're doing this. So we'll make sure Sean knows to tell us what his favorite giant robot is for the next week. And
yeah, he snuck out to go set up.
Yep. So, and we'll do that. So, guys, that's all we've got. Go forth and love some comics. Woo! I'm going to introduce myself first. My name's Caleb Alexander McKenzie. I'm the co-host of the Southern Fried Geekery podcast. We've got a booth set up outside. Please come by and pick up some stuff. Enter to win a chance to get a different piece of original art that we're raffling off tomorrow. I want to take a moment to introduce our amazing artists that we've got sitting up here that are going to be doing our drawing duel for us. Mr. Andrew Pepoy and Mr. Robert Pope. What we're going to do here in just a minute is we are going to pick a character that you guys pick for us. And these two individuals are going to draw it in their individual styles. They have, 45 minutes?
Yeah, 45 minutes.
So we're going to see how that goes. And at the end of it, we're going to give away some art done by two artists who have done some of the most iconic characters in all of comics and all of pop culture. You've seen their work, and we're going to talk about a lot of the stuff they've done as this goes on. So who would you guys like to see them draw? Is there a couple of characters that you guys know of that you think you got a hand? Daredevil? Does that sound like a character y'all can tackle?
I like Doctor Who.
Daredevil and Doctor Who. So maybe we'll do Daredevil first. We have time to get to the second. Let's do Daredevil. I think we kind of settled on Daredevil. So
That's okay with that.
That's.
Do we want to show hands, or are we good?
Is everybody okay with Daredevil?
So as we're letting you guys kick off and draw, just to kind of get the conversation going, I know you guys have done a lot of work for the Big Two, but you've also done a lot of licensed characters. You've done everybody. I think both of you have worked on Scooby-Doo.
10 years.
Mr. Peep, yeah. I know there's been some Archie work. There's been
20 years.
Sonic the Hedgehog.
15 years.
Just a full career of it. What do you guys like about those characters? These kind of licensed cartoonist style characters, as opposed to some of the more photorealistic or characters like Daredevil that you're drawing?
A lot of times they're just good, fun comics.
Yeah.
I mean, that was, Scooby was just, lots of, it was fun. I mean, it's like most comics, especially like say in the 90s and such, were so dark and so not fun that, it was always nice to do something where it's like, this is a good, fun comic. I mean, that's why that's why I had so much fun on The Simpsons. I did The Simpsons for 18 years.
Wow.
That's my longest run on anything. It's just those stories were fun and crazy kind of things, and just I was always happy to just do something that like didn't bring more darkness or violence to the world, and I could just sort of say, here's a fun comic book, have a laugh or two.
Yeah, exactly. It's everyone just needs to. I mean, and specifically, when are we supposed to do it? I'm supposed to be drawing now.
You're supposed to be drawing and talking.
Well, I can do both of those. All right. Well, ultimately, for me, it was the thing about Scooby was it was sort of like casting a movie every time, because you'd get the script, and 2 seconds after you got the script, you realized you had to create the villain. That stinks. 2 seconds after you would start, I'm going to get a fresh sheet of paper. You had to you had to create the monster. You had to create the monster. You had to create the guy who turns out the villain. You had to create 2 or 3 red herring characters, and all those. I like blue better. I like blue better. But we laughed. But
they didn't get it.
That's okay. But it was always neat, and there were all these subtle changes, and a lot of different people who worked on when things like. For a while there, Archie was licensed at Marvel. Mm-hmm. Was that when Dan Spiegel was drawing it?
Who was licensed at Marvel?
Wasn't it Dan Spiegel?
Who's drawing what?
Scooby.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, he was doing Scooby, and that was the Star line, wasn't it? Or the last? That was before the Star.
That was before the Star line. There was a short-lived Hanna-Barbera one. Like Jabberjaw or something.
Yeah,
like that too.
I've got some of those. Yeah. Some of those were like written by Mark Evanier or something.
Right. That's why Dan Spiegel was probably on that.
Exactly. But it was just a lot of fun to draw those things. And since I started in animation, for lack of a better term, my personal style was whatever the director I was working with told me to draw like. So some people have a great facility to create storylines and characters, but not everybody is Jack Kirby and not everybody is Steve Ditko. And I'm not comparing myself to this man, believe me. But somebody like a John Buscema was very happy for the better part of his career, metaphorically playing with other people's toys. Mm-hmm. He did not particularly have any interest or inclination in creating his own universes. That just wasn't his bag. And every artist is different. And there are some people who are very focused on finding their own creative, creating their own universe, more or less. In my case, when I tried, because we've all tried at some point in time, when I was in high school, I did a lot of strip submissions and things like that, and tried to come up with my own characters.
Stripping in high school is not a good idea.
Not the way that I looked back in high school. I tell you, it was sort of like Pillsbury Doughboy. But the point of the matter is that, as Sparky Schultz once said, the problem with the young cartoonist is that not having lived much life, they tend to cartoon other cartoons. And the derivative nature of my work as a writer was something that I could never get over. So I stopped, frankly, trying. And that's not meant to sound like some sort of sad sack deal or something. It was just the way it was. I'm done with that question, by the way.
Okay. Well, no, I was kind of fascinated by it. So you both mentioned that part of what drew you to the style that you both enjoy and the types of characters that you like drawing and looking at is that they weren't the dark characters. And so Frank Miller and...
Well, I mean, I grew up on Frank Miller.
Well, I love his work, but they really did change the industry. They changed, especially the way that we look at, and Alan Moore, I think, as well, changed the way that people look at comics and that storytellers look at comics, and they brought it into to another level where it was not meant as this adolescent fun. So the blowback to that is kind of you guys.
Well, ultimately, the problem was that it had less to do, and it's always unfortunate when the people who are creating something that's different and unique are sort of singled out. But the real problem, of course, is that the corporate structure that was selling the material began to really feel and had the numbers to back it up that, well, that's all that's selling. That's all that people want is, grim and gritty stuff, when that was not necessarily always the case. So, for lack of a better term, when you've got, companies like the big two seeing the numbers on Watchmen or Dark Knight or things like that, they can't help but say, order us more of that. It's no different than a network deciding that one certain type of programming is, how many times in the history of the medium of television has somebody said, sitcoms are dead, and it's all just going to be, detective procedurals with a murdered body in the first 5 minutes of the show, and then nothing but people trying to solve some sort of heinous crime. And then 2 seconds later, every other show is a comedy. And, these things move in waves. It's just the last thing that people remember that was an enormous seller was largely that grim and gritty stuff. And it was important at the time. It was incredible and unique. But it just overwhelmed everything else. And it became the gold standard that everyone was going for. And that was just unfortunate. And also it happened at a time where, the market for things like all ages and alternative styles of alternative titles and things like that weren't bringing back in the kind of revenue, that people were looking for. And of course now there's this whole business of comic books that not necessarily as a revenue stream, but as something that inspires other revenue streams like movies and, ancillary markets and video games and stuff like that.
You're much better at talking than drawing than I am.
I'm much better at talking than much anything, but but your drawing will look better than mine. But it's kind of a please. I've spent the last 3 minutes going, what does Daredevil's mask look like again? But I kill me. It's I like I say, I don't think it's particularly correct to because I've read and reread Dark Knight a million times, and it's an amazing piece of work. And Alan Moore has written some of the most marvelous comics. My favorite Alan Moore story is actually a Superman story. It's not Watchmen. It's for the man who has everything, the Superman one-shot. Because I think that is the most marvelous love letter to the Silver Age DC Comics that may have ever been written. Incredible piece of work. So, I'm not sure that I'm really answering your question as much as saying that the kind of work that we do just doesn't necessarily fit that mold.
Or that market.
No.
So to speak. I think it is directed towards a younger market, or at least towards a younger style. So in that, as you guys are known as cartoonists, how have you seen the market change for your particular style? As we have artists who do a lot more photorealism, as digital art has become a little bit more, there's been a little bit more digital saturation to the market. How has that affected your style and the way you do your characters?
You want to go?
No, I mean, as far okay, repeat some of that question because I think I lost you on.
So as the comics industry has adjusted towards artists that do a lot more photorealism in some of the mainstream titles, And you guys are primarily cartoonists, and you do a little bit more of a cartooning style. How has that affected the way that you do your work? Or
there's not as much work to be had in many cases. I mean, and certainly like Archie is not doing traditional Archie much anymore,
right?
And so there's not any really work on that to be had. But I mean, I guess for me, for me personally, at least, I can at least ink the realistic work. So, I don't know. I guess I always tried to be adaptable anyway. I mean, that's the only way I survived in this business for the last 30 years almost now, is by being adaptable, because sometimes there was work doing superheroes. I spent much of the 90s working on the X-Men. But that sort of dried up, at least for me, the 90s, and the whole 90s comics boom imploded, and I found work on Sonic the Hedgehog. I had work on Sonic the Hedgehog, or then, just as things were beginning to dry up on the superhero books, Scooby-Doo came along. And fortunately, I found the best thing for me in this business was to be adaptable. Mm-hmm. So I moved on to, doing a lot of humor stuff. So it's like, I could do the little scratchy pen lines on the superhero stuff, or I could do nice big juicy brush lines. And I did like almost the entire run of Knuckles the Echidna, mm-hmm. or on The Simpsons. But again, that stuff didn't always last either. Scooby-Doo dried up, Sonic the Hedgehog dried up, and around that time, I got Fables at DC Comics,
mm-hmm.
And
with Bill Willingham.
And so I was doing a lot of Fables related books, and so so for me, it's just, I guess it's a matter of, if the industry is going to change, if I want to keep doing comics, I have to change with it.
Okay.
It's like, as much as I might like to always do the kind of comics I want to do, I can't always do the comics I want to do. I have bills to pay.
Yeah, exactly.
There's, that's a lot of people say, what makes you keep wanting to do these comics every month? It's like, bills.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Because it's a Western society, and they just will come and turn the electricity off. You'll hear that lock and then pop.
I do love comics. There's nothing I'd rather do than comics, and I could probably make a much better living doing things other than comics. But in the end, I love comics, and so I keep making comics so I can keep paying the bills. And occasionally, still have some fun doing it.
Absolutely.
Yep. Yeah, like sometimes with me particularly, because really, I can't eat my way out of a paper bag, and that's mixing metaphors like you shouldn't be allowed to do. But so in my case, and some of the things I do don't really qualify as penciling. Like when I'm working on the Charlie Brown books, it's total illustration where it's penciling and inking, coloring, and that was a nice, like Andrew was saying. I reached a point where the all ages titles for DC were sufficiently, when we were, both of us were really totally humming on the all ages books, I had a guarantee pretty much of doing at least one full book and a couple of covers a month. And if you can keep up with the output, that's actually not too bad money. But on the other hand, suddenly, there's a contraction in the industry, and suddenly it goes from Looney Tunes and Scooby-Doo and Powerpuff Girls had their own title, and Dexter's Lab had their own title, and there was the Cartoon Network Block Party comic book, and then suddenly it's like, well, Scooby's still there, but they're buying 8 pages a month. And that's it. And Looney Tunes goes to being a quarterly book, and they're buying 8 pages a quarter. And there's just one Cartoon Network book, and then there's no Cartoon Network books and stuff like that. So it's like you have to go find something else to do. And, in that case, I had to... I've never actually worked for the Archie people. I got, well within striking distance, and then had some other job come up, and they had me do an endless series of test pages. And I got a commission in from DC, and I had to put them off. And apparently, it was like one of those things where I inadvertently upset someone because I didn't have time to do another free test page, and I never heard back. But and I turned my attentions on doing the Peanuts stuff, totally because I was jealous about a friend of mine who had gotten a commission with the Peanuts people, and I was like, hey, I should be drawing that stuff. I draw Peanuts real good. And this is one of those things this is one of those things that shoehorns into don't quit kind of a story. Because I really hate those don't quit kind of stories, but this is sort of true. And what had happened was I'd sent pages off to the Peanuts people, test pages, and the editors, and this was when, and this was not specifically to the Peanuts people, creative services in Santa Rosa. This was to Boom, the comic book company in California. And I never heard back from editorial, and then months passed, and then my good friend Stephanie Gladden, who's a marvelous cartoonist, she suddenly has a job, and she's drawing some Peanuts stories. And to be perfectly blunt, I was like, well, that's wonderful, that's great. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, why am I not drawing that? I should be drawing that. So I found out who I emailed one of the senior editors, and a couple weeks passed, and then I got an email from this other editor who I'd never spoken to and said, oh, yeah, he left, like, unexpectedly. Did you send us stuff? We never saw stuff. We never saw your stuff. They'd never seen the pages. Nobody had ever opened the email. And I resent the stuff, and then they're like, sure, and they gave me a story right away, and I went to work on Peanuts. And even that, as far as being able to be adaptable and moving, Boom at a certain point kind of, the license for the Peanuts thing was over and done with, and I still wanted to draw more Peanuts, and I was thinking, well, where can I do it? And then I saw that these children's books were doing very well, and I went to Simon & Schuster, and that's a whole different universe, because then you're talking about children's book publication and people who have literary agents and all this other stuff, which I certainly don't have anything like that. And believe me, I mean, that is its own unique world with commissions and agents taking a pretty good chunk of change. And I knew nothing about that. Still don't. But I had to just keep going. And in between, since I started in advertising, I had worked my way back into doing things like storyboards for corporate stuff, which frankly pays, when it's there, extremely well. But it involves things like, AT&T campaigns for a new iPhone. So you have, these complicated storyboards where you're trying to stage 7 or 8 people around a Christmas tree who are ecstatic with joy about getting another iPhone. And the amount of energy in creating those drawings is intense, and also you're acting like a director, and it can be very fulfilling, but it is certainly not drawing Charlie Brown, nor is it drawing Daredevil or anything of the like. But it is a means to an end, and keeping yourself in the industry and keeping yourself facile as a professional and being able to draw. And one of the things that's very compelling as an artist, or important, is to constantly be forced into drawing things that you don't particularly like to draw. Because if you just keep drawing the same stuff you like to draw, you're never going to learn how to do Boo. Because you just won't, there's nothing compelling about that. I keep erasing this pinky because I can't draw it for some reason. I'm going to have to pick this up and move it. So I'm waiting for your head to show up.
I've been moving my stuff around all the time.
All right.
But yeah, no, that's one of the lessons I got from my first sort of mentor as a kid, was just, learn to draw everything. When I was a kid, I was lucky enough that when I was 10 years old, I met Rick Yeager, who had been the artist on Buck Rogers from 1933 to 58, and was still working at that point. This was 1979, and he was drawing a Sunday thing called Happy Dick, and was also doing a strip called Grin and Bear at the time. And so and he would tell me about, how he actually did comics, and this was the first real live cartoonist I ever met. And one of the things he kept trying to tell me is he would look at my little, little drawings as a 10, 11, 12-year-old, was just, don't just draw all these superheroes, learn to draw some other stuff too. And,
So just as kind of a time check, I think we've got about 15 minutes left. Let you know how the pacing is going. So both of you guys, as you talked about, you're playing in other people's universes. Now, as we've seen these licensed characters, different artists embellish in different ways. Certain characters change as far as the way they look over time, or at least there's certain interpretations of it. What kind of responsibility, as people, especially working under people such as Charles Schultz, that legacy, What kind of responsibility to the legacy of their style do you guys feel?
Well, that depends on the property that you're working on. Some of those things are dictated by the corporation that you're dealing with. When you're drawing for Looney Tunes or Scooby-Doo, you are, for lack of a better term, at the mercy of Warner Brothers licensing, and whoever is in charge of licensing at the time being has an incredible amount of latitude to determine whether or not what you're drawing is acceptable to the market at that moment in time. Right. I've had to redraw enormous parts of Looney Tunes stories that I've done because the powers that be were interested in pushing a version of a character, happens with Tweety all the time, where they want like something that looks more like a marketing or a merchandising version of Tweety than, say, the classic version of Friz Freeling's character from the cartoons in the 40s. So the master you're serving changes and changes radically. It was the same way with Scooby-Doo. When I started working on Scooby-Doo, the editor was a lady named Joan Hilty, who was a very facile cartoonist herself, more of an indie cartoonist, really. And her attitude was she really kind of wanted you to make your own mark with Scooby while you stayed within the parameters of the model sheet. If you look at a lot of what's happening in Scooby right now, they really don't accept any deviations from the original model pack that was designed by Iwo Takamoto and Jerry Eisenberg back in the late 60s, early 70s. So if you're thinking you're going to put your own stamp on that, you've got another thing coming.
Right, like when I was working on Scooby, we went through, I worked for 4 different editors.
The editor shifts on Scooby were amazing.
5 maybe?
Yeah.
Because I was on it a lot longer than you, I think.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was on it for
and certainly, and it would change from editor to editor. I mean, like the original editor, Bronwyn Taggart, really wanted you to do your own take on things. I mean, who would think of putting Ivan Brunetti on Scooby-Doo and some of the other Cartoon Network stuff? So she definitely was looking for a variety. She wanted like people who were known for other things, which is one reason why she called me. I was known for like X-Men comics. And which is one reason why she called me to do Scooby-Doo, So I was inking Joe Staton, who was known for Green Lantern, but he was a good cartoonist, and she saw that I was also a cartoonist, because I was already doing some Sonic the Hedgehog stuff at the time. So she wanted you to, have some fun with it, and you were allowed to do various different takes. While I think the next editor up pretty much didn't want you to even vary the line weight for the original model sheets. Brother. And I had to, and we had to keep trying to explain to her that if we don't put any line weight variation on this whatsoever, that it's all, like on a model sheet that works because, it's like that's going to be actually moving when it's animated. But on ours, these are not ever going to move. They are static images, and we have to do line weights to give it some effect of actual movement or something. And so even from editor to editor it's going to change. I mean, but or different things happen where you suddenly are allowed to like what happened on The Simpsons was Matt really wanted it kept to his sort of his look, that sort of very solid deadweight pen line. And so I was getting occasional work in there, but that was not something I was particularly strong at, and so I don't think I was doing perhaps my best work on that. But then with The Simpsons, they often would have like homages to other comics or movies or things like that. And they had an issue come along that was supposed to be an homage to the old Carl Barks Uncle Scrooge comics. Mm-hmm. And so they wanted a different look for that. And so they had, and what also happened at the same time was, like I'd gotten a scanner and a printer to be able to do blue lines, which I hadn't been able to do when I first started working for them. I was having to do everything on overlays in the early 2000s, and this was about 2004, 2005. And so they had me do, they wanted this very different look. And I was now able to finally work on a piece of paper as opposed to a piece of vellum,
How do you ink on vellum? I don't understand you. I've never been able to make that work.
It's not easy. It's not easy. And so, like I said, it was always a struggle, and I don't think what I was doing was my best stuff. But they let me do my best stuff on this, and because it was a different kind of issue. And I guess the guys at Bongo had been asking Matt, "Can we please do some different inking styles on this?" And he, I guess, had not been into it. I'm going by what I was told. This could be all a fake story, but this is what someone told me. And apparently, Matt came in and saw this job that I had done. As I was turning in pages, and saw it and was like, "Oh, this is good." And from that point on, different inking styles were allowed. So it all, you never know. So what people will allow and don't allow on these books changes over time.
Is that the story with the cover that's the homage to the Donald Duck story about the treasure that's hidden in the ship and the old knight or whatever? Yeah, I've got that. That's one of my favorite things.
We're at about 5 minutes, guys.
Are we?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not done gushing.
I'm not even close to done with this thing. So, whoever gets this can have a very unfinished drawing here. I'm doing the best I can.
By the way, with the Charlie Brown thing, to elaborate further on that, that's even more unique because you're dealing with Sparky's heirs, and the fact that one of the things that he demanded was that after he left, that he said no more Peanuts strips, and to that end the family has taken it to that. But ancillary market stuff like children's storybooks or things that are based on the movies that were made or things like that, those have been allowed to move forward. However, his oldest son Craig, who is involved in the day-to-day business, and his widow Jeannie, and the creative director Paige Braddock, marvelous cartoonist, they are absolutely hyper-concerned with maintaining the integrity of the material. So what they prefer to work on is they prefer dealing with things that are either extrapolated from the strip, where you have ideas that are taken from a series of strips and made into a book where there's not necessarily anything that's being made new, or just a fairly endless homage to the TV specials or the movies and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And this is not just them, but this is, of course, Peanuts Worldwide in New York, and DHX Media in Canada, who's bought a huge chunk of the Peanuts business. Everyone has a say. What this ultimately does is it makes getting anything done very slow, because like when I draw a Peanuts book, it goes through half a dozen sets of hands just to make sure that it's accepted by all the parties involved. When I was working on Batman the Brave and the Bold, that was before the final merger with DC and Time Warner had occurred. And DC, at that point, had total say over what the Batman books were like. So for the first time in my career, all I had to do was satisfy one editor at DC. It didn't have to go to merchandising people or marketing people for a review. And as a result, the approvals process was so streamlined, I didn't know what to do with myself. I was like, "Oh, you mean that's it? I'm good? Oh, okay. All right, great." I was just like, we don't wait for 3 weeks and find out from 16 different people what they think? So it's a complicated question, and certainly it's a valid question. And as a professional, it's an important thing that you have to remember in terms of who's looking at your work and who's approving it.
Absolutely. So I guess I want to direct this next question, and probably what will be our last question, to you. And so, working as both a writer and an artist in the sequential art form, how is knowing how to adapt both of those skills helped you? So I'm a writer, but I personally can't draw to save my life, and so not knowing those tricks, the art tricks, really does affect the way I do sequentials. How has knowing both of those skills helped you in your craft?
Well, I mean, certainly, since I do write, I do try to it's in some ways it's sort of like most pencilers have to have something of a writing knowledge in a way, because they need to be able to figure out how to translate that script to the visual image. And I guess, since I do also write, I probably, in some ways, it actually makes me overthink the script in some ways. I'll look through it and decide, oh, well, maybe I could try this or that instead of just sort of, because I might question the script more than I might have if I hadn't been also writing. I'm trying to think. I'm not sure if I've got a good answer for that one.
Hey, it works for me.
But I certainly do enjoy the writing when I can do it. I've written a few things, and it's certainly, my writing process is probably different than your average writer's because I only write for myself. So I do always have, so it's like at least I always have, like my scripts, when I do a script that I actually have to have an editor look at, it's actually quickie little doodle thumbnails with word balloons on it, as opposed to actually writing out a script. Because in that way, the editor also gets to see my thumbnails at the same time, and it helps me sort of figure out where do I fit, how do I fit everything, and will this dialogue actually fit?
So I guess same question as, does it affect the way that you look at scripts in both writing and drawing, knowing how those sequentials work?
Is that one for me?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Well, first off, as I say, not being a writer, I wouldn't pretend to be one at all. I think to extend a little bit on what Andrew said was Mark Evanier said that most artists have a little bit of writing skill because they have to kind of write, they have to extrapolate the script and make it work in a visual way. And oftentimes I will find myself adjusting a script because the writer has done something that would work perfectly well in a teleplay, but in the visual medium it simply doesn't work. Scooby was always a bear with that because you have so many characters talking, and in a situation where you're reading from left to right, you just you cannot have a page. You can't have a panel where Daphne talks, then Fred, then Velma, then Shaggy, and then Daphne again, and she's all the way at the left. So you have to break the script up. You have to adjust the panels. Sometimes the visual will give something in a way in a fashion that the writer didn't necessarily see coming. So you have to kind of get somebody on the phone and say that's not necessarily working the way you might have thought or the way that it really wants to. And those are things that happen quite often. So it's not so much writing as it is kind of a form of editing. In my case, because I'm concerned about taking the writer's intention and making it work in the best visual way possible. I'm not interested in my own take. I'm interested in satisfying what the writer wants, and sometimes the drawings betray what the writer wants unless you do some serious fixes.
Right. Yeah. I often get. I often am having let writer, like on some of the projects where I've worked with another writer on a script, I'm having to let them know this just cannot work visually.
Yeah.
That they will, like you were saying, you like with what they don't get, like you were talking about the multiple characters, or what they often don't get is that you can't have that character making multiple actions within the same panel.
Yeah, it always goes that way.
And it's just like there's no way to...
Someone cannot walk into... In one panel, someone cannot walk into a room, throw a hat on a hat rack, pick up a newspaper, see a classified ad in the newspaper, and do a take. But both of us, many times, more than I can count. Especially things that are written, once again, when we were working on the Space Ghost Coast to Coast comic book, almost all of those were written by people who wrote for the show. So they just acted like they were writing a TV show.
It's a different medium.
And totally. And it was just a question of educating people that, well, frankly, this is funny, but it simply doesn't behave right. It can't work. And it's important, to be realistic and not try to squelch something or be negative, but just to say, it ain't a TV show. It's not going to work that way.
Well, while you guys are wrapping up the drawing, we've had a few more people who have walked in here since we began. Who doesn't have a red ticket? Okay, so we'll get them, and
Raise your hand.
as the guys are finishing up, and then we'll get ready to give away some art. So how was that? Let's give these gentlemen a hand as they...
I don't know. We didn't put anybody to sleep.
No, I love it. This is my bread and butter. I love hearing about how the medium works and the history of the medium. Yeah.
do have a question. I know maybe not so with the big two, but have y'all ever had the opportunity to, where the writers came up and asked you to create a character? Like maybe they had writer's block or something, just said draw something, and you had the opportunity, they incorporated that into whatever you were working on at the time?
The only thing, I'll stall out for a second because you have much more experience than I do in this. The only time that's ever happened to me once was I was doing a Scooby-Doo comic, and the writer, a guy named Charlie Fish, who's written a million comic books, he works for children's television for Sesame Street. He called me up and he said, well, I want to do this Addams Family knockoff. And I haven't really figured it out, but there's a mom, there's a dad, there's a grandmother and a grandfather, and all this. And he just said, go ahead and design them, and we'll name them later. And it wasn't really even writing. I mean, we pitched some things back and forth about what would be going on with the staging in their house and stuff. But it was clear that the direction was very straightforward. I was like, I just want to do a derivative kind of Addams Family knockoff, and we ended up using them in multiple Scooby-Doo issues. So much so that I'm occasionally looking to make sure that they haven't used them somewhere else, or to see. Not to say that I would be unhappy with that. It's just I'm always curious to see if those things have a life past the original writer and the original artist. So I don't think I answered your question because it wasn't like anyone was asking me to write anything. They were just kind of asking me to draw.
I mean, or like I've had like in Dinosaurs, I had Michael Uslan give me here's 6 pages for a fight scene. These are the things that need to happen in these 6 pages. He didn't write any dialogue for it necessarily. He just was like, here, and so draw all this, and it was this. I mean, so I just went ahead and started drawing stuff, and he later had to add in some words and stuff because he just was like, go for it, have a. But that was the Marvel way of writing comics in many ways. The old days in Marvel comics, they would the writer would write a plot, and sometimes it'd be a very detailed plot, but other times I've heard of days where it's sort of like, here, pages 1 through 5, these things happen.
The famous Marvel method.
Yeah. And then the writer would go back in. And
I hate to interrupt and end these conversations. Done, huh? This room is about to get flooded with podcast, or with not podcast.
No, I hope she's going to say flooded with heat.
So they need to be able to get back to their tables, so they're right in front of the stage.
Okay.
So we're fixing to make that happen. So
I guess I will call this done.
I couldn't figure out what to do with the billy club, so I just dropped it fast.
Yeah, okay. Yours looks more finished.
I think I was trying to do something that was sort of brave and the bold, and then I decided I wasn't. And then I decided I was just ripping off Sal Buscema.
If you're going to rip off somebody, Sal Buscema is a good person to rip off. Let's give these guys another round of applause. It is